Black woman saves stranger on the street, unaware he's a millionaire CEO who will change her life. Tasha was a woman who carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. She worked two jobs, one as a barista in a small, bustling cafe in the heart of the city, and the other as a cashier in a nearby grocery store. It was not an easy life. She woke up before dawn, worked late into the night, and had just enough time to grab a few hours of sleep before doing it all over again. But through it all, Tasha kept a smile on her face. She knew that one day things would be different, things would get better. She believed in hard work and perseverance, and she had no intention of giving up. The city was always full of energy. The streets were crowded with people rushing to and from their destinations, and the sound of car horns, chatter, and footsteps filled the air. It was a typical Wednesday afternoon, and Tasha had just finished her shift at the cafe. She was headed to her second job at the grocery store, her tired feet dragging along the sidewalk. The rain had started to fall, light at first, but quickly turning into a heavy downpour. Tasha had forgotten her umbrella at home, so she pulled the hood of her jacket up and hurried down the street, trying to avoid getting too wet. As she rounded the corner, she noticed something unusual. A man was stumbling down the sidewalk, his movements unsteady, as if he could barely keep himself upright. Tasha slowed her pace, watching him carefully. He looked disoriented, his face pale, and his clothes were drenched from the rain. He was heading straight for a puddle, and Tasha instinctively stepped forward, unsure of what she was doing but feeling a strange pull to help him. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. The man looked up, his eyes unfocused, and he nearly tripped over his own feet as he tried to steady himself. I'm fine," he muttered, though his voice was weak and strained. He looked like he was about to fall, so Tasha quickly reached out and steadied him. "You don't look fine," Tasha said, her concern growing. "Come on, let me help you." Without thinking twice, she wrapped one of his arms around her shoulders and helped him sit down on a nearby bench out of the rain. The man's head lolled to the side, and his eyes fluttered closed for a moment. Tasha pulled out her phone and quickly dialed for an ambulance, but just as she was about to press the call button, the man's voice interrupted her. "No, please, I don't need an ambulance," he said weakly. I just need a moment." Tasha hesitated for a second, but she decided not to push him. There was something about his tone that made her feel like he didn't want to be a burden. She sat down beside him, still keeping an eye on him to make sure he was okay. "My name is Tasha," she said after a moment, trying to break the silence. "What's yours?" The man blinked a few times, his eyes slowly refocusing as he looked at her. "Ethan," he replied softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Okay, Ethan, just sit tight. You're going to be fine," Tasha said, trying to offer him some comfort. She rummaged through her bag for a bottle of water and handed it to him. He took it gratefully, his hand trembling slightly as he held it to his lips. "Thank you," he said, his voice a little stronger now. "No problem," Tasha said with a smile. "I don't mind helping, just take it easy, okay?" For a few minutes they sat in silence, the sound of the rain hitting the pavement and the occasional car passing by the only noise around them. Tasha kept glancing over at Ethan, making sure he wasn't getting worse. He seemed to be recovering slowly, but Tasha could tell he was still weak. She knew it was best to wait a little longer before he tried to get up. After a while, Ethan let out a deep sigh and looked up at Tasha. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause any trouble," he said, his voice apologetic. I don't know what happened. I've never felt like this before." Tasha shrugged. "It's no trouble," she said warmly. "We all need help sometimes." Ethan gave her a small, grateful smile. "I guess I'm just not used to it," he admitted. "I'm used to being the one who helps people, not the other way around." Tasha raised an eyebrow, curious. "You help people?" she asked. "What do you do?" Ethan hesitated for a moment, then shook his head. "It's not important. I just needed some time to myself, I guess." Tasha didn't press him further. There was something about his guarded response that made her feel like he had a lot more going on than he was letting on. But she wasn't going to push him. People had their own battles, and she wasn't in a position to ask too many questions. "Well, if you ever need anything, just let me know," Tasha said, offering him a warm smile. "I'm always around." Ethan nodded, his tired eyes meeting hers. "Thanks, Tasha, I appreciate it." After a few more minutes, Ethan seemed to regain some of his strength. He stood up slowly with Tasha's help and gave her a nod of thanks. "I'll be okay now. I don't want to keep you from your work." Tasha stood up as well, adjusting the strap of her bag over her shoulder. It's really no trouble. You take care of yourself, okay? She said with a reassuring smile. Ethan managed a faint smile in return. I will, thanks again. Tasha watched him walk away, still a bit unsteady on his feet but making his way down the street nonetheless. She couldn't help but feel a sense of relief that he was okay, even if she didn't know exactly what had been wrong with him in the first place. As she turned and continued on her way to the grocery store, she couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was somehow important, that it was the start of something unexpected. Little did she know, Ethan was about to become a much bigger part of her life than she could have ever imagined. In the weeks that followed, Tasha couldn't seem to forget about the brief encounter with Ethan. It had been such a small, almost insignificant moment in her life, but something about it lingered in her mind. Every time she stepped into the cafe for her shift or walked down the same street, she found herself looking out for him. The strange thing was that Ethan seemed to be doing the same. Every few days, she'd spot him walking by the cafe, sometimes with a small smile and a quick wave, sometimes with a more serious expression as if lost in thought. And each time she would smile back, unsure of why it felt so comforting. Ethan never stayed long. He'd usually pop in for a coffee, sometimes sit by the window for a few minutes, and then leave just as quietly as he'd come. Tasha would serve him, offer a few kind words, and they'd exchange polite small talk. Despite the brief nature of their interactions, Tasha began to notice that Ethan seemed more and more like someone who had been placed in her life for a reason. There was an unspoken connection between them, one that neither of them had yet fully explored. One particular afternoon, as the cafe grew quiet during the late lunch rush, Tasha was wiping down the counter when she saw him again. Ethan walked in with his usual steady pace, his dark coat drenched from the rain outside. He removed it quickly, revealing a dark sweater beneath, and gave Tasha a small wave as he approached the counter. Hey, Tasha, Ethan greeted, his voice always calm, almost like he was trying not to make too much noise in the world. Hey, Ethan, Tasha replied, smiling as she wiped her hands on her apron. It's good to see you again. You want your usual. Ethan nodded, leaning against the counter. Yeah, sounds good. Tasha quickly made his order, a black coffee, and placed it in front of him. As she did, she noticed that his usual faint smile wasn't quite as bright as it had been before. His eyes seemed distant, lost in thought. You okay? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Ethan hesitated for a moment, as though considering whether to share something with her. Finally, he sighed, resting his hands on the counter. I've just been thinking a lot lately, he admitted. About everything. Life, work, just all of it. Tasha leaned forward slightly, sensing his unease. You want to talk about it? Ethan smiled faintly, but there was a sadness behind it. Not sure it would help, he said softly. Sometimes I feel like I'm living in a world that's moving too fast for me to keep up with. Tasha could relate to that feeling. She had always felt like she was trying to catch up, like she was constantly running just to stay in place. She knew how hard it was to make sense of everything, to try and figure out where you belonged in the chaos of it all. Yeah, she said with a knowing smile. I get that. Sometimes life doesn't give us a chance to catch our breath. Ethan nodded, his eyes searching hers as if trying to gauge whether she truly understood. For a moment, there was a quiet connection between them, an unspoken bond built on shared experiences and mutual respect. You ever feel like you're stuck? Ethan asked quietly. Tasha paused for a moment, reflecting on the question. She thought about her long hours at the cafe and the grocery store, the constant hustle, and the overwhelming feeling of being trapped in a routine. It wasn't easy to break free from a life that felt like it was on repeat. Yeah, I do, she said finally. I've got dreams, big ones, but sometimes it feels like the world's telling me I'm not meant to achieve them, like I'm just supposed to keep working and surviving. Ethan looked at her thoughtfully, his eyes softening. I think you're meant for more than that, Tasha, he said quietly. You've got a lot of potential, I can see it. Tasha was taken aback by his words. She had always thought of herself as just another woman trying to get by, but hearing someone say she had potential was strange and uplifting. It made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. Thanks, she said, a little embarrassed. That means a lot coming from you. Ethan smiled, but his expression quickly became serious again. I wish I could help you more, Tasha. I know how hard you're working and it just doesn't feel right that you're stuck. Tasha didn't know what to say to that. She had never expected anyone to feel that deeply about her struggles, least of all someone she had just met. But something in Ethan's eyes told her he was sincere, that he wasn't just speaking out of pity, but out of a genuine desire to see her succeed. "I don't know what to say," Tasha muttered, looking down at the counter. "You don't have to say anything," Ethan replied softly. "I just want you to know that you're not invisible. I see you, Tasha." The words hit her harder than she expected. She had spent so much of her life feeling overlooked, like a face in the crowd. To hear someone acknowledge her, truly see her, was something she hadn't experienced in a long time. "Thanks," Tasha said again, her voice barely above a whisper. As Ethan finished his coffee, the silence between them deepened. Tasha couldn't quite figure out what was happening between them, but she felt an odd sense of calm in his presence. She felt heard, understood, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like someone cared. Ethan stood up to leave, his coat back on, but before he did, he placed a few bills on the counter. "I've got to get going," he said. "But I'll be back. You'll be okay, Tasha. Don't let the world make you forget what you're capable of." Tasha watched as he walked out of the cafe, his figure disappearing into the rain-soaked street. She stood there for a moment, still processing the conversation. Ethan's words kept echoing in her mind. "You're not invisible." "I see you." It felt like a strange weight had been lifted off her shoulders, a reminder that she wasn't alone in her struggles. The next few days passed by like they always did, busy, filled with work and little time for anything else. But Ethan's presence lingered. She couldn't stop thinking about their conversations and what he had said. And then, just like that, he was back in the cafe a few days later. This time, he wasn't alone. A group of well-dressed business people accompanied him, walking into the cafe like they owned the place. Tasha felt a jolt of surprise, her heart racing. Ethan was with them, of course, but the way he carried himself was different now, confident, assured, and unmistakably in charge. He caught Tasha's eye from across the room and gave her a small nod. Tasha wasn't sure how to react. This was the first time she'd seen him in this kind of environment, and the contrast between the man who had sat with her at the counter just days before and the confident businessman in front of her now was striking. She tried to shake off her nervousness as she prepared their coffee order. But as she moved around the cafe, a strange feeling crept over her, one she couldn't quite put into words. She glanced at Ethan again, but this time his gaze was focused elsewhere, as if he were in his element among the group. Tasha couldn't help but wonder who Ethan really was. What kind of life did he lead when he wasn't sitting in a small cafe, sharing stories with her? And what role would he play in her life moving forward? As she served the coffee, Ethan turned and smiled at her. This time it wasn't the same quiet, reflective smile. It was more like a smile of acknowledgement, one that said, "I see you too." Tasha's heart skipped a beat. Something told her that their story was far from over. The days that followed felt like they were moving faster than Tasha could keep up with. Her routine was the same. Early mornings at the cafe, long hours serving customers, and then heading over to the grocery store for the evening shift. But now she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Ethan's brief appearances in the cafe, along with their conversations, had left a mark on her. She found herself thinking about him more often than she expected, wondering if there was more to him than just the friendly man she had met on the street. One evening, after a particularly long shift at the grocery store, Tasha decided to stop by the cafe for a cup of coffee before heading home. It had been a tough day. Her feet were sore, her mind exhausted, and she was feeling the weight of it all. But as she entered the cafe, she was surprised to see Ethan sitting at the corner table, his back turned to her. He was alone, and for the first time, he wasn't in his usual business attire. Instead, he wore a simple gray hoodie and jeans, looking much more relaxed. Tasha hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should interrupt his solitude, but something in her told her that this moment was different. Without thinking too much about it, she walked up to his table. "Hey, Ethan," she greeted, her voice a little hesitant but warm. Ethan turned around, surprised to see her, but his face lit up with recognition. "Tasha, hey, it's good to see you," he said, his voice sounding genuine. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Come sit down." Tasha sat down, grateful for the chance to unwind for a few minutes. She noticed that Ethan seemed different today. There was a calmness to him, an ease that made him more approachable. He wasn't the businessman who walked in with an air of authority. He was just Ethan, the man she had shared a coffee with and exchanged thoughts about life. "You seem different today," Tasha remarked, trying to lighten the mood. Not in a suit and tie. You planning to blend in with the regular folks? Ethan chuckled softly, a warm, sincere laugh that made Tasha feel more at ease. Yeah, I guess I am. Sometimes I just want to get away from all of that, the meetings, the phone calls, the pressure. I like this place. It's peaceful, it's real. Tasha raised an eyebrow, surprised by his openness. Pressure, huh? Sounds like you've got a lot on your plate. Ethan nodded, his expression shifting as he glanced out the window, watching the rain fall softly. More than you'd think. I'm the CEO of a tech company. A lot of people depend on me, and the weight of it all can get heavy sometimes. But it's the kind of work that never stops, you know? Tasha was taken aback. She had always suspected that there was more to Ethan than met the eye, but hearing him admit it out loud was still a shock. Ethan Reynolds, the CEO of a tech company. The man who had been sitting at the counter, sipping coffee and sharing life stories with her, was a millionaire business owner. I had no idea, Tasha said, her voice betraying her surprise. I mean, you seem so normal. Ethan smiled at her response. I guess I try to keep things simple when I can. I've been in the business world long enough to know that not everything is as it seems. People see the success, the money, but they don't always see the long hours, the pressure, the sacrifices. Tasha nodded, understanding more than he knew. She had her own struggles, and while they were different, they were no less important. I get that, she said quietly. I work 2 jobs just to make ends meet. I've got dreams of starting my own business one day, but sometimes it feels like I'm stuck in a never-ending cycle. Ethan leaned forward, his gaze focused on her. I don't think you're stuck, Tasha. I think you're just at a crossroads. You've got everything it takes to make it, but sometimes we just need a little push, a little help. Tasha blinked, surprised by his words. A little help from someone like you? Ethan shrugged, his expression soft. I know what it's like to feel like you don't have the resources to move forward, but you'd be surprised at what a little support can do. I've been lucky enough to have people help me along the way, and I think it's time for me to give back. Tasha didn't know what to say. She had never imagined that someone like Ethan, with all his success and wealth, would care about her dreams. It seemed surreal, like something out of a movie. Look, Ethan continued, I'm not offering you a handout. I'm offering you an opportunity. I know a lot of people in the business world, and I can connect you with the right people who can help you get started. I believe in what you can do, Tasha. And if you're serious about your dreams, I want to help make them a reality. Tasha's heart raced as she processed his words. She had always known that her dreams were big, but they had also always felt just out of reach. To hear someone, especially someone like Ethan, say that he believed in her, that he thought she could make it, was both exhilarating and terrifying. Why would you help me? Tasha asked, still in disbelief. I'm just a barista. I don't have anything to offer you. Ethan looked at her with a smile that was almost sad. You have something far more valuable than anything money can buy, Tasha. You've got heart, you've got determination, and you've got the will to make something of yourself. That's more than most people have. Tasha felt a lump form in her throat. It wasn't just the words that moved her, but the sincerity behind them. She had spent so long feeling like she was invisible, like her dreams didn't matter, that hearing Ethan say those things made her feel seen in a way she hadn't in a long time. I don't know if I'm ready for something like that, she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. I've spent so many years just trying to survive. I don't know if I can take that kind of risk. Ethan reached across the table and placed his hand gently over hers. It's okay to be afraid, but don't let that fear stop you from pursuing what you want. You'll never know what you're capable of unless you take that first step. Tasha looked at their hands, and for a moment she just sat there, letting his words sink in. Her whole life had been about surviving, working just to make it to the next day, the next paycheck, the next job. But what if she could do more than just survive? What if she could actually live her dream? What if she could build something for herself, something that wasn't just about getting by, but about thriving? I don't know if I can do it on my own, Tasha admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. You don't have to, Ethan said. I'll be here. You don't have to do it alone. The simplicity of his promise took her breath away. Ethan wasn't just offering her financial help or connections. He was offering her something far more valuable, support. He was telling her that she wasn't alone in this. That despite her fears, she had someone who believed in her. Tasha felt something shift inside her, a new kind of hope taking root where doubt had once been. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time she felt like maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. Okay, she said finally, her voice steady with determination. I'll take the chance. Ethan's smile widened and he squeezed her hand gently. That's all it takes, Tasha, a little bit of faith. As they sat there, talking about her plans and the next steps she would take, Tasha felt a sense of possibility that she had never felt before. She didn't know where this new path would lead, but for the first time, she felt ready to walk it. The weeks that followed felt like a whirlwind for Tasha. What had started as a small moment of kindness, helping a stranger on the street, had evolved into something that completely changed her outlook on life. Ethan had become a presence in her world that she hadn't expected, offering her advice, connections, and, most importantly, his unwavering belief in her potential. She was still working at the cafe and the grocery store, but now her mind was occupied with bigger thoughts. Her dreams of building her own business weren't just dreams anymore. They felt within reach. One morning, as she arrived at the cafe for her shift, Tasha was surprised to find an email waiting for her. She quickly pulled it up on her phone, heart racing as she saw the subject line, "Opportunity for your business idea." It was from Ethan. She quickly opened the email, her fingers trembling. Ethan had included a message offering his support in helping her get her business off the ground. He had already made some calls to people he knew in the industry, and he had arranged for a meeting with a local business consultant who could help her create a plan. The email was warm, encouraging, and full of the same belief he had shown in her from the start. Tasha couldn't believe it. She had talked about her dreams with Ethan casually, not expecting anything to come of it. But here he was, offering her everything she needed to turn her idea into reality. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stood there, staring at the screen. She felt a mix of emotions, excitement, fear, and a growing sense of possibility. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. She could actually make this happen. "Everything okay?" A voice broke her from her thoughts, and she looked up to find Mia, her coworker, standing in front of her. "Yeah," Tasha said, trying to sound casual, though her excitement was palpable. "I just got some big news." Mia raised an eyebrow. "Big news? What kind of big news?" Tasha quickly showed her the email from Ethan. Mia's eyes widened as she read through it. "Wow," Mia said, handing the phone back. "This is huge. Are you really going to do it?" Tasha felt a lump form in her throat. She had never imagined something like this would happen to her. "I think so," she said quietly. "I've always wanted to do something more. But now with Ethan's help, it feels like I actually can." Mia smiled, clearly happy for her. "You've got this, Tasha. I know you do." Tasha smiled back, grateful for the support. It was one thing for Ethan to believe in her, but having someone like Mia, who knew how hard she worked, validate her dreams felt even better. Later that week, Tasha met with the business consultant Ethan had set her up with. The consultant, a woman named Claire, was kind but no nonsense, quickly getting down to business. She listened carefully as Tasha explained her vision, a small but vibrant boutique that sold locally sourced, handmade goods from women artisans around the world. It was a business model that combined Tasha's love for creativity with her desire to make a difference. She wanted to showcase talent from all corners of the globe while empowering women in the process. Claire took notes, asking insightful questions and offering suggestions on how to refine the idea. By the end of the meeting, Tasha felt like she had a clear roadmap of how to proceed. Claire had laid out the steps for developing a business plan, finding suppliers, and marketing the products. Tasha was more focused than ever, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was taking control of her future. Ethan was there to support her every step of the way. Whenever Tasha felt uncertain or overwhelmed, he was just a phone call away, offering words of encouragement or advice. They met regularly to discuss her progress, and each time Ethan would ask how he could help. He'd introduce her to people in the business world who could offer further guidance, always being a steady presence in her corner. But as much as she appreciated Ethan's help, Tasha began to realize something else. She was starting to depend on him more than she wanted to. Every time she faced a challenge, she would turn to him for advice or reassurance. At first, it felt natural. He had the experience, after all, but soon she began to feel like she was losing a bit of her independence. She didn't want to just be someone who relied on Ethan's success. She wanted to prove to herself that she could make it on her own. One evening, after another long day at the cafe, Tasha sat down in her small apartment, feeling exhausted. She opened her laptop and began working on her business plan, but her thoughts kept drifting to the questions she'd been avoiding. Was she doing this for herself, or was she doing it because Ethan believed in her? Would she still be pursuing this path if Ethan hadn't been there to guide her? She stared at the screen for a while, unsure of how to proceed. It was then that she realized something important. She had to take ownership of this journey. She couldn't just keep looking to Ethan for validation. She needed to believe in herself, too. The next morning, Tasha sent Ethan a message, thanking him for all his support and letting him know that she had made some progress on her business plan. But she also told him something else. "I think I need to take a step back for a bit," she wrote. "I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I need to figure some things out on my own. I want to prove to myself that I can do this." When Ethan replied, his message was understanding and encouraging, as she had expected. "I get it," he wrote. "You've got the strength and drive to succeed, Tasha. I'll be here whenever you need me, but I know you'll make it on your own." Tasha sat back, feeling a mixture of relief and fear. It was the first time she had really stepped away from his guidance, but it felt like the right decision. She had to trust in her own abilities and take full responsibility for her success or failure. Over the next few weeks, Tasha threw herself into her work with renewed focus. She worked late into the night, refining her business plan, researching suppliers, and drafting emails to potential partners. She found herself pushing through moments of doubt, reminding herself that she was capable of more than she had ever realized. And then one evening, after weeks of hard work, she hit a milestone. She secured her first supplier, an artisan collective from a small village in Africa. They were excited about her vision and eager to work with her. It was the first tangible step toward making her dream a reality. Tasha couldn't help but smile as she read through the email confirmation. It was one small victory, but it was hers, and it felt incredible. A few days later, Ethan called to check in, and Tasha couldn't wait to share the news with him. "I did it," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "I secured my first supplier. It's happening, Ethan." Ethan's voice was full of pride. "That's amazing, Tasha." "I knew you could do it." Tasha felt a rush of gratitude, but this time it wasn't just because Ethan had believed in her. It was because she had done it. She had taken the first step on her own, and it felt like a new beginning. As the months passed, Tasha's business began to take shape. She faced challenges, finding the right marketing strategies, managing her time between 2 jobs and her new venture, and juggling the ups and downs of starting a business. But through it all, she kept moving forward, fueled by her belief in herself and her vision. Eventually, she was able to open her first small storefront. It wasn't much at first, just a tiny shop in a local market, but it was hers. And as she stood behind the counter, watching customers browse the handmade goods from women artisans around the world, Tasha realized something. This was just the beginning. She had learned that success didn't come from waiting for someone else to give her permission or validation. It came from taking risks, trusting herself, and putting in the hard work. And as she looked around the shop, she knew that she was finally on the path to something real. She smiled, feeling proud of how far she had come, and excited for where this journey would take her next. As the months passed, Tasha's life began to transform in ways she had never imagined. The little shop that she had once only dreamed about was now a reality. Every day, she worked tirelessly, balancing the demands of her 2 jobs with the challenges of running her new business. It wasn't easy. There were days when exhaustion would hit her so hard that she would struggle to keep her eyes open. But every time she looked around her small boutique and saw the handmade goods from talented women around the world displayed on the shelves, she knew that the hard work was worth it. Her shop had become a sanctuary for her, a place where she could breathe and create. It wasn't just a business. It was a reflection of her dreams, her values, and her passion. The customers who walked in often commented on how unique the products were, and some of them even struck up conversations with her, asking how she had gotten started. Tasha was always happy to share her story. She would tell them about the 2 jobs she had worked before, the long hours, and the moment she had decided to take the leap and pursue her dream. And while some customers seemed fascinated by her journey, others would offer words of encouragement, telling her how proud they were of her success. But Tasha wasn't satisfied yet. She had always dreamed of growing her business, expanding it beyond the small local market. She wanted to reach more people, to connect with customers from all over the world who would appreciate the products she had carefully selected. She wanted to make a difference, not just by providing unique goods, but by supporting women artisans who were often overlooked and underpaid. To do that, she knew she had to think bigger. She began researching online marketing strategies, learning about social media advertising, building an online store, and reaching out to influencers who could help spread the word. It was a steep learning curve, but Tasha was used to challenges. She had always been someone who refused to let obstacles stand in her way. One evening, after a particularly productive day of working on her business, Tasha sat down at her desk, sipping her tea and reviewing her plans. Her small shop was doing well, but she felt that there was still so much potential to unlock. The idea of expanding to an online store, of selling her products to people across the country or even internationally, was exciting, but it also scared her. As she stared at the computer screen, a sudden thought struck her. She realized that she hadn't talked to Ethan in a while. He had always been there for her, offering advice and support, but lately she had been so focused on her own path that she hadn't reached out. Maybe now was the time. She knew he would have valuable insights, and even though she had learned a lot on her own, it wouldn't hurt to ask for his perspective. Tasha quickly sent him a message. "Hey, Ethan, it's been a while. I've been working on expanding my shop and building an online store. Would love to get your thoughts when you have some time." She hit send and waited. It didn't take long for him to reply. "I'm so proud of how far you've come, Tasha. I'd love to help however I can. Let's set up a time to talk this week." A few days later, Tasha found herself sitting in a cafe, a laptop open in front of her, waiting for Ethan to join her for their meeting. It felt strange to be meeting him like this again, though this time it was different. She wasn't sitting across from a stranger or just a business partner. She was sitting across from someone who had been a mentor, a friend, and a constant source of encouragement in her life. She had come a long way since they had first met, and she couldn't help but feel grateful for everything he had done to help her. When Ethan arrived, he smiled warmly, sitting down across from her with a coffee in hand. "How's everything going?" he asked, his tone friendly and easy. Tasha smiled back, feeling a mixture of excitement and nerves. "It's going really well. The shop's doing better than I expected, and I've started working on an online store. I've got a lot of ideas, but I'm not sure where to start." Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's amazing progress, Tasha. An online store is a great next step, but I can imagine it's overwhelming. There's so much to think about when it comes to e-commerce, marketing, fulfillment, customer service." Tasha agreed. "Yeah, it's definitely a lot, but I think I'm ready to take it on. I just need some guidance on the best way to get started." Ethan leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful look on his face. "You're on the right track. You've already got a unique product, which is half the battle. Now it's about building a brand. You need to tell your story. People want to connect with what you're offering, but they also want to know who you are, why you're doing this, and what your mission is." Tasha nodded. "I've been thinking about that. I want my business to represent empowerment, creativity, and community. But sometimes I get stuck on how to communicate that to others." "That's the challenge," Ethan said. "But I have no doubt you can do it. You've been building something real here, and that authenticity will resonate with people. Just remember, it's not about selling a product. It's about selling an experience, a story." Tasha felt a spark of inspiration. Ethan's words were exactly what she needed to hear. She had spent so much time focusing on the logistics of her business, inventory, shipping, suppliers, that she had forgotten why she started this journey in the first place: to make a difference, to help women around the world, and to create something meaningful. As their conversation continued, Ethan offered more practical advice. He suggested looking into platforms like Shopify and Etsy for launching her online store, creating a social media presence that aligned with her brand, and reaching out to influencers who could help spread the word. He also encouraged her to keep building relationships with her suppliers, to maintain a personal connection with them so that the authenticity of her business would always shine through. By the end of the meeting, Tasha felt more confident than ever. She had a clearer vision of the path forward, and she knew exactly what steps to take to grow her business. "Thank you, Ethan," she said sincerely. "I couldn't have done this without your help. You've really helped me see things in a different way." Ethan smiled, his eyes full of pride. "You're the one doing the hard work, Tasha. I'm just here to help you see your potential, but you've got this." As they wrapped up their meeting, Tasha felt a deep sense of gratitude for Ethan's support. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but for the first time, she felt like she was in control. She had a vision, a plan, and the belief that she could make it happen. In the weeks that followed, Tasha's business continued to grow. She launched her online store, reaching customers from all over the country, and slowly but surely her brand began to take shape. Her story, one of resilience, creativity, and empowerment, resonated with people and sales began to pick up. It wasn't easy, and there were still challenges to overcome, but Tasha felt more confident with every small victory. One evening, as she closed up the shop, Tasha took a moment to reflect on how far she had come. She thought back to that rainy day when she had helped Ethan on the street, never imagining that it would lead to all of this. She thought about the long hours, the doubts, and the fears that she had pushed through. But most of all, she thought about the strength she had found within herself, the strength to believe in her dreams, to take risks, and to never give up. Tasha smiled to herself as she locked the door to her shop. She was building something real, something that mattered. And as she walked out into the night, she felt like she was finally on the path she was always meant to be on.